Well, now we're going to talk about what after the findings. So once that you present your findings, two, three, or four important findings, then you need to also present a little bit about analysis and discussion. So when you present the discussion or the analysis of your findings, it is kind of contrasting what you found with what we know from the literature. So sometimes you confirm what the literature says, like for example, again, like if we talk about the financial compensation for remote work and in a qualitative aspect, maybe you confirm that financial elements are important because they motivate people, that they kind of show the importance of remote work for the company, and maybe it keeps them interested on doing this. Maybe that is kind of confirming the theory, like maybe you found that is similar. So it is okay if part of your discussion is about confirmation of the literature. But what is more important and more interesting is when you find that something is not exactly as it says in there. Like for example, maybe you find in your interview that the respondent says like, yes, of course, it's important that we receive compensation from working from home, but it is more important if we are motivated, because sometimes we received compensation, but our manager was pushing us to do more work. Like maybe he wanted us to work at 8 p.m. To answer emails very late. So in that case, even though that we received financial compensation, it was not the best because we had a lot of complications. So that's an interesting finding that you can contrast with the literature, and that is the discussion. You can discuss, okay, financials are important because this and this, but we saw that financials have to be coherent with other aspects, like for example, the respect on the schedule. For if the manager doesn't respect the schedule, the impact or the process on how the person interprets that financial compensation is not the same. So we have to reflect on how we interpret the financial compensation. Like maybe the theory thinks that financial compensation is something very isolated, that is only that, and it has a positive effect. But now you understood that if it's not coherent with other things, maybe the financial compensation might have a negative effect, or maybe it can have it won't have any effect because other things are more important. So that's an interesting finding that you need to state in the discussion. So when you present the discussion, you can maybe talk about what you confirm and then what is new. And another important thing is that you don't have to be very stressed about this part, because when you are doing your thesis, maybe yes, but not right now, because you are not doing a literature review again, and you are not arguing with all the literature in the topic. But at least try to contrast your findings with the one or two important papers that you cited when you talk about your purpose and your question, right? Like when you talk about purpose and question, you need to cite some other papers that have studied this topic, right? Like to convince why the purpose and the question are relevant. So it is a good idea if when you do the discussion, you contrast your findings with those papers, with the one or two papers that you cited at the beginning. So you can say, this paper, this very important paper that we read when we thought about the purpose, and they talk about this, and our findings are a bit different in this specific thing. So don't get very stressed, like don't think like you have to discuss against all the theory. It is just like an exercise. It's not like you will publish this, of course. It's just practice. So it's not a big issue that you will have to deal with other literature. So don't worry that much about it. Like it's okay if you contrast with the one or two big papers that you cited at the beginning. And the last thing that I want to tell you is that remember that the discussion is almost 100, well, I wanted to say 100% theoretical, but 99.99% theoretical. Like the discussion should not be practical or empiric, or I mean, like totally practical. Like, of course, it is informed by the empirics, but the discussion is at the theoretical level. Like, don't discuss like, oh, the firm should have done this, or the respondent should have done this, because you are not reflecting on the empirics. You are reflecting towards the theory. You need to reflect on how can we improve the theory. So then your discussion and your contributions are theoretical. So then when you find a difference, try to highlight how can we implement that difference, or how that difference is important at a theoretical level. So maybe again, like maybe it is that we are not unpacking the whole process, that maybe we are ignoring important things, that maybe the current research focuses on an isolated aspects and we need to take everything into consideration. These are ideas of how classical contributions are built. And if you are doing quantitative, maybe it can be a challenge to kind of highlight the differences, because you have, for example, you tested the hypothesis and you are okay with the hypothesis, you support your hypothesis. So the evidence support the hypothesis, sorry. So how can you still make a contribution? So something that you can do is that maybe you can claim that in your study, you were able to quantify the effect. Like maybe you can claim that previously we only knew that there was a relationship between the financial rewards and the remote work. But now that you did all the quantifications of the effect, and then you did the survey and the sample, and then you did the regression model, now you are able to quantify the effect. That is also kind of a contribution. You can claim that that's correct, but that you are building more on that. Another possibility is that you can also claim that it is also a contribution that you confirm the hypothesis in the specific context of your study. Like maybe it is interesting, the industry where you are doing your study, like maybe it is about banks. Like maybe you can claim that the previous research focused on general, like in general, managers in general, and you focused on banks. And then you highlight the importance of banks. And that is your discussion, that you kind of went a bit further. Maybe in quantitative, sometimes it's difficult to find differences, but rather than differences, it's like, what did you did differently to the other? And that's what you highlight. So I hope that this is clear for the analysis and discussion. So now I think I will do just one more video to finish with ethics and limitations, I think.